Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Andy Oakley. Normally I talk about New Zealand issues, and today I'm going to spread the net a little bit wider and I'm going to talk about what appears to be the collapse of the Western society. I think that anyone older than about 50 who's got their eyes open will know that things today are very, very different to what they were back in the 1950s, 60s and 70s perhaps. If we look to some of our institutions, the universities for instance, I think that they're producing frail people who do not wish to use the scientific process to analyse anything. The scientific process is the constant questioning of all theories and updating our knowledge as we move forward in time. Rather, they're taught what to think and encouraged to deny others the right to talk about any new theories. I think it also in universities, history is being altered, it's being replaced with a narrative that is toxic towards any group that's not a minority. In fact, history has been turned into a succession of events of oppression of one group against the other. Economics, as a theory, has been bastardised and turned into a system that promotes consumerism and materialism. 24-hour marketing to humans has altered our sense of purpose and meaning. The relentless urge to get the latest technology requires that people prostitute their abilities to manipulate others in this game, which is really demoralising. I say demoralising because I think that the growing numbers of people who are diagnosed as depressed have been misdiagnosed. You see, depression apparently can be fixed by using pharmaceuticals. However, if they could just realise that these people, including vast amounts of children these days, are actually demoralised and there's no pill to fix demoralisation. Economics has been made overly complicated by the neoclassical professors in the universities. Fundamentally, economics is the system that keeps track of reciprocity or exchanging things with others for mutual benefit. However, authoritarian governments these days have not heard of mutual benefit. They don't operate a system that benefits people at all. Taxing people who have provided others with goods or services one-sided. The people don't get anything in return. Now you might say that the governments provide schools and hospitals and roads, etc., and they need money for that. But the governments are able to issue the sovereign currency to build infrastructure at will, and they've always been able to do that. I mean, just look what they did when they spread these rumours of the so-called pandemic. Suddenly they could afford to imprison the entire population and dish out welfare checks to sustain everyone. Jacinda Ardern did that just a few months after refusing to pay to give nurses a pay increase. And later she sacked many of those nurses who refused to be coerced into filling themselves with experimental drugs. Well, you know, just look what that fiasco produced. You know, it didn't matter whether it was masks, injections, social distancing, cruel threats to sack people, actually carrying out those threats all amounted to nothing. Everybody got sick anyway. You know, you might say that the entire budget of $14 billion produced nothing, absolutely zero. And I think at best the vaccines delayed the inevitable for a month or so. And when you look at the data that shows the waves of illness in New Zealand, in February this year, we had a spike steeper than almost any other country in the world. So much for vaccines. And one thing that you never heard throughout the pandemic was if you're healthy, i.e. you have the correct BMI and eat almost only nutritious food, this illness will hardly impact you at all. Even now, when a massive amount of triple vaccinated people have tested positive for COVID, they still insist that you get a fourth. And isn't it strange that as winter sets in New Zealand, massive amounts of those double and triple vaccinated people are coming down with nasty flus and cold at a rate that I haven't seen before. And because in New Zealand, we are one of the only a few countries in the world who are allowed to advertise pharmaceuticals, the ads are all over the media. Get the flu jab. Now, does anyone really believe that these pharmaceutical companies have invented vaccines that work better than a healthy human immune system? Of course they haven't. The evidence is playing out right in front of us now, but we've allowed our government to silence us. If we should so much as question the obvious, you know, why did so many get injured by the vaccine? Why did everyone get sick anyway? Why did you publicly state that when someone died and they tested positive COVID, that it was a COVID death? There are a myriad of other questions too that we must keep on asking, and we should never let up. We should demand these answers. So what is it that has allowed our systems of health, education and economics to become so corrupt? Now I say it is corporations, consumerism and materialism. These ideologies have removed purpose and meaning from our lives and replaced them with a system that results in demoralisation and boredom. The system involves politicians stating that there is no such thing as abundance. They constantly preach that we have only scarcity. On the one hand, young Johnny or Bonnie are told that they must concentrate in their maths class because they need skills to operate in the world of consumerism. But in the next class, they'll be told that it is the world of consumerism that is killing the planet and humans. The world is going to end. No wonder young people are killing themselves at unheard of rates. And, this is really serious. They're demoralised before they even enter the workplace. They're fed on ideologies that don't make sense. In other words, are nonsense. Becoming demoralised is the correct response to this kind of indoctrination. They become disconnected from society, which is the precursor for addiction. And so often they end up in prison on drug charges. In a circular fashion, it is a broken economic system that results in money-hungry corporations that market consumerism 24 hours a day to humans. These humans then create a system that produces small amounts of very wealthy people who operate well in that system. Yet the vast majority of people don't operate well in this system. As soon as they obtain the latest gadget, they immediately get bored and look for the next marvel, which is equally boring. And to make matters worse, the same flawed economic system allows huge food-producing corporations to destroy the natural microbiome of our soils, reducing it to lifeless dirt where only pesticide-riddled, low nutritional food will grow. The shrinking amount and low quality of plant-based foods that people are eating is resulting in a BMI crisis. Obesity and diabetes are at epidemic proportions. It's obvious to even the layman that COVID deaths were strongly linked to obesity, diabetes and other diet-related illnesses. I think as a society we need to start opting out of this political and economic nonsense. It's clear that our politicians are inept, and worse, they don't care about our young. We need to begin pulling our children out of government schools. We need to grow more of our own foods again. And you should involve your children in this process too. We need to reject globalism and cheap trinkets from China. We need to reject powerful food corporations who run supermarkets. Instead, we need to provide for ourselves again. Build our own furniture at local level. We've done this previously. We're a resourceful lot. Doing all these things, sweating and toiling to provide, care and nurture, invokes meaning and purpose to our lives again. So this is just the beginning of the conversation. There's a lot more to cover. But as New Zealanders, you should know that we have a choice. We can opt out of this system. It's obvious that it's become corrupted, and those who live off it will never admit that it is them and their system that is the problem. So I thank you for listening to this, and we'll cover some more of these issues and maybe a bit more in depth later on. I've been Andy Oakley.